Okay, I want to do one example of evaluating with an absolute value, because there's one rule that you have to remember, and it's an error that a lot of people make, and so I really want you to pay attention to what this rule is and try to, again, make sure you apply this when you're doing this. So evaluating, remember, is doing two things: substitute and then simplify. So we're going to substitute in, then we're going to simplify the expression, paying special attention to what do we do with the absolute value. Okay, so we're going to rewrite our expression using parentheses for each letter so that we don't lose a negative anywhere. So this is going to be 3 times 2 times the letter A, so a parentheses for the letter A, plus 5, plus 2 times the absolute value of 3 minus, and then another parentheses for the letter A. Now I'm going to go ahead and substitute into each parentheses the value of A, which in this case they tell me is 4. So for this A, I want to put in 4, and for this A, I want to put in 4. Then we're going to go ahead and do our PEMDAs. We're going to do our parentheses, exponents. We're going to do all that first. Okay? So we're going to simplify inside the absolute value first. Remember, we learned that in our last lesson. So we have 2 times 4 here, which is 8, plus 5, plus 2 times the absolute value of 3 minus 4. And then I want to go ahead and simplify inside. So here I have 3 times the absolute value of 13 plus 2 times the absolute value of -1. Now here's where the rule comes into play. The tendency is most students are going to want to distribute or just multiply this like you would it was parentheses, but these aren't parentheses. These are absolute values. And we have to simplify or take the absolute value of the number before we multiply it. This is 3 times the absolute value of 13, meaning 3 times the distance from 0 of 13. Another way to think about it is like this. If you remember, we have to do PEMDAs, right? PEMDAs means parentheses first, then you have to do exponents, then you multiply and divide. So if I have 3 times 2 squared, if I'm going to follow PEMDAs, I have to do my exponents first before I can multiply. So I would have to do the 2 squared first, which is 4, parentheses, exponents rather, then multiply. 3 times 4 is 12. If I mix up the order and I multiply first, 3 times 2, 6 squared, and then do exponent, I get 36. And you know, well, these are two very different answers. This one being incorrect, this one being correct. So it's very important that we do exponents first. In this case, it's very important that we take the absolute value first. In other words, we figure out what the absolute value is before we multiply. So we do 3 times the absolute value of 13, which is 13. How far is 13 from 0? 13. Plus 2 times the absolute value of -1. How far is -1 from 0? 1. And you'll notice what changes here. If I was to multiply the 2 times -1 right here, I would have a -2. But I'm going to multiply 2 times 1, which actually gives me +2, so you can see why it makes a big difference. So the rule is you have to actually take or determine what the absolute value is before you multiply. Okay, you don't multiply into absolute value. So the 3 times the 13 is going to give me 39. The 2 times 1 is going to give me 2, which then I can then add together. So my answer is 41. So 41 is my answer. So remember, take the absolute value before multiplying. Okay, don't forget that rule. All right, good luck with your homework.